Hey, I'm Sarah, and this is the Goddess in Training podcast. This isn't about being perfect or polished or having it all figured out. This is about what happens when you actually start listening to your body, your intuition, your patterns, your truth. I'm asking big questions and having real conversations, sometimes messy and sometimes magical, with people who've lived through it, grown through it, and still don't have all the answers. If you've ever doubted yourself, betrayed your gut, or wondered if you're the only one, you're not. Let's talk about it. Today's episode is both intimate and expansive. I'm joined by my best friend and former partner of 10 years, Emmanuel. What started as a casual off-the-cuff chat turned into one of the most raw and revealing conversations we've had on record. We talk about intuition in relationships, how it can be drowned out by desire, people-pleasing, or the hope that things will get better. We share stories, including one that might sound a little too familiar, about being blindsided, missing red flags, and learning to trust ourselves again. We also dig into the complexities of open relationships, the energetic exchange between partners, and what it really means to be whole before entering into any kind of romantic dynamic. This is a vulnerable one, so take a breath, settle in, and maybe have some tea nearby. Let's get into it. All right. Hey, Sarah here. Thanks so much for joining us today on another episode of Goddess in Training podcast. I am here today with my best friend, Emmanuel, and this episode is going to be fun, I hope. It's a little bit off the cuff, a little bit impromptu. Emmanuel is being a good sport and doesn't know exactly what we're going to talk about. I have a little bit of story time to share. But first, we'll do a little introduction and then start off with the grounding question. So, as I said, this is my best friend, Emmanuel. And in full disclosure, we were in a relationship together for a decade, and it was an open relationship. And so that's going to color this conversation. So, Emmanuel, thank you so much for being a good sport and doing this episode with me. So we'll start off with a grounding question. So, if you can think of, just off the top of your brain, an example of a time when you've listened to your intuition and it turned out positively for you. It can be really simple or it can be complex. What's the first thing that pops into your brain?
One time I was talking to a friend and they had a number of pauses and constrictions in our conversation about questions I was asking. And as we were getting to know each other, and the questions that I was asking did not make sense. And we continued to go forward, and they said, "Why are you asking such intimate questions?" I was like, the kind of questions that came up, I was curious to know. They're like, you're asking too many questions, too close. And later on, they said, the questions were having an effect on them, and they brought up stuff. And then we've continued to work through that process and move through that boundary and became great friends from that point on, just because there was a connection of some sort going on, and I didn't really understand what was going on. But we met a point and moved forward through that.
But so what role did your intuition play in that engagement?
It was more like, hey, what about this? Hey, what about this? Hey, what about this? And I asked the questions, and they went to a part where it just opened up this wealth of communication, where it was a flow back and forth.
Mm-hmm. So it was not a flow, and then you listened to your intuition, and then it became a flow.
Yes.
Wasn't a flow. They were kind of coming back at you with a hey, no thanks. Mm-hmm. But then you used your intuition to maybe more gently ask the questions or ask the questions in a different way, and then it opened up the conversation.
Yeah, it definitely. It made pathways that were not the average. What is your job? What is the temperature of the location? What is the sports team? And these were other questions about individuals connecting, and we connected for sure.
So I know you so well, and that just makes total sense to me, because you have a tendency to not beat around the bush, so to say, and just like jump right in and like ask the real questions. And just to dig in deep and like figure out who somebody is from the moment that you meet them. And I can see some people being like, whoa, who are you? You're making me feel some kind of way. I don't know you like that. And so you used your intuition to kind of step back a little bit and ask those questions. The like, oh, so what did you do last weekend? The stuff that is really basic and boring, I think. But but it's an entry point. It's an entry point into getting to know somebody. Sure. and opening up those doors.
Sure, for sure. Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. Okay, so this is the part that Emmanuel doesn't know. There is somebody that we both know very, very well who just had an experience with an intimate partner. And so I'm going to start out by giving some story time, anonymized story time, to protect the identity of the people involved. And then we're going to talk about his reactions to how this played out and talk about how people can better use their intuition or what the role of intuition is in intimate relationships. Because it's not a one-size-fits-all. None of this stuff is a one-size-fits-all. All right, so story time. So this person that we know really well has been in a relationship with somebody for about 5 years, basically living part-time together, meeting family, all of those things that you do when most people do when they're in a long-term relationship. And so a couple of days ago, this person, she received a phone call from somebody, an unknown number, and she picked it up. And the person, the woman on the other line, on the other end of the line said...
Wait, so are you giving genders? You're giving genders?
Yeah, I'm giving genders, yeah. Okay. I think it's somewhat important for it, but...
So what gender received the telephone call?
A woman.
Okay, the woman, so is there a male gender and a female gender that are in a relationship together?
Correct.
For 5 years?
Yes.
Okay. And the female gender received a telephone call from another female
From another
gender.
woman, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Got it. So the woman on the other end of the line says, do you happen to know, and then the name of the male partner of the woman?
Sure. Okay.
And so woman A, we'll call her. There's woman A and woman B. Woman A is in the relationship. Woman B is the woman on the other end of the line.
So we'll call her
Okay.
male A, woman A, on the relationship.
There's
together.
only one male.
Oh, okay. All right. As we know.
Yeah, we know of in this situation. There could be more. I don't know. There's always more to the story. You never know. You never know. So, but for the purposes of this story, woman A, woman B, man. Mm-hmm. Okay, so woman A says, yeah, I know that guy. We've been in a relationship for 5 years. Mm-hmm. Woman B says, oh, and is clearly upset from the jump and crestfallen, and says, oh, I've been dating that man for 2 years now. Mm-hmm. So woman A is like, oh, that is news to me.
All right.
And so woman B had basically gone to the man's house and seen some evidence of woman A.
Sure.
And then looked at the phone of the man and deduced who this might be and found the number and made that phone call. Very, very awkward phone call. I think maybe some of my listeners here have been on either side of those phone calls, and it's very awkward for everyone. And so woman A is, to be honest, woman A kind of immediately felt some relief because this relationship hadn't been great for a while. Although it was long term and she thought monogamous, which is what she wanted at the time, and but it was her immediate response was a little bit of like, oh, things started making sense. Mm-hmm. Things started making sense. Okay. And so that's where, you know, the question of previous intuition and not listening to it might come into play. But so woman B had no idea whatsoever, and they exchanged some words, and woman B had requested to have a little bit of time before the man is confronted to get her things out of the man's house. And woman A was like, wait a minute, you have stuff at his house? Like, I have stuff at his house. What kind of charade is he playing to, like, move the stuff? For 2 years. 2 years.
All right. Time flies.
Time flies.
Time flies when you're having fun.
So woman A got a phone call from the man. She had promised to not confront him. However, the man called with some like timely need. They were planning a trip together with his family, and requested some information from woman A. And woman A says, well, I can't give you that information. I just got a phone call from insert the name of woman B. The man's response was one word: gotcha. Granted, woman A had prefaced the phone call saying, I don't have time to talk about this, but you need to know. So man said, gotcha. And then that was basically it. And after a 5-year relationship, that was basically it. So this opens up the conversation and I think this will be interesting from a man's perspective, like, what's going through the brain of this guy? Is it, okay, so I've had conversations online with people and like about cheaters, and there's well, all cheaters have something unhealed in themselves, and that's why they act this way, and that there's some underlying thing. It doesn't make it right, of course, but I kind of feel like, and I've had experiences, and I know that you and I have talked about these experiences because we were in an open relationship for a decade. So we had discussions at length about my interactions with men and times when you felt like perhaps I wasn't fully seeing the full picture and putting myself at risk, not like physical risk, but like emotional risk, because I wasn't fully seeing the entire behavior, the full breadth of behavior of a certain man.
Sure.
And that I think that some of our discussions were around like, maybe there are some men who are malicious when it comes to cheating and lying. And so that's my question, is like, how do you feel about that? Do you think it's laziness, opportunistic? Or is there something more malicious about it? Like, woman A is a very, in general, intuitive person.
Okay.
And tapped in, and I feel like sometimes men can be attracted to women like that. Just throwing this out there as a theory. Men are sometimes attracted to women who are intuitive and powerful, and they get pleasure out of getting one over on them. Is that a thing? Do you think that's a thing?
To address the question directly, do I think that it is a frequent occurrence that particular men feel powerful or vindicated by getting one over, by pulling the wool over a female's eyes? Yes, in short. However, I feel that is not a gender situation. I don't think it's a gender situation. I think that people in general that have that, I'm a little bit superior than you, or a lot superior than you. I can do this thing to you and you won't know it, or it will take you some time to understand, and I will benefit and laugh and sit back and watch the process unfold because I'm superior. And that is not a gender thing. That's more of I feel like I'm at this class, certain level of this class, and you are not. And so because you're not, you are to be in the trough. And I'll sit and wait for you to dust yourself off the trough. And because I don't feel a particular connection, whatever that connection looks like, I don't feel a particular connection to you. When you figure out this, and if you're upset and you leave, okay, fine. You were at the level of whatever, or let's call it a value system. I'm at a value system of 10. You're at a value system of 1. And I'm here with you. By the time you figure out whatever else, you get upset and leave, I'll just get another 1. There are plenty of 1s out there, and I'll just get another 1 to fill in the space, and we'll continue with the process. I don't know that, I wouldn't say it's a gender, men specifically, or some men specifically feel like they can go through and say that there is a sport or amusement for saying, I am doing this process in this relationship and you don't feel me, you don't understand what I'm doing, you're here and you have no idea. I think it's just more of a personality difference. Where
like a narcissism.
Whatever the word works best for, I am at this level and I'm going to do this thing, and you are a pawn or piece of the process that goes through. And when you have a situation and you change, okay, I'll just get another person to fill that spot for that level. So so I don't know about that situation, that relationship, man A, woman B. However, it's more of a, I think that I'm better than you are. That's my feeling. My feeling is that I think that the person feels that they're better than the other person. And this does not relate specifically to I don't really care. I don't really care how you come back from this process.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes it's like people do it because they can too. And the way that dating is and the way our society is structured too, it's kind of easy to do it. And so it's kind of like, I'm doing it because I can. And maybe there's no other thought put into it. And that's the sad part. I mean, it's just no regard for the other people in the relationship.
I definitely would not assume it's malicious off the bat.
Yeah.
I would say if they were in a long-term relationship and there was a conflict in the relationship and person A wanted to strike back and tried to hurt person B, then they would do that thing for that process. Like if I know you don't like pepperonis, then I'm going to order pepperonis, or I'm going to eat pepperonis before I come home, and that is specific for you to be try to take power back and to hurt you.
But to have something going on for 2 years, that's not the reason.
No. I don't think it's particularly malicious at that reason. Just it works in my process. It works here and it works there, and I get everything that I'm looking for, and I move forward. Yeah.
I mean, at its base, it's just selfish. It's just incredibly selfish.
Yes, but selfish is then a term that we're putting on behaviors of certain people. So like we've got the term now neurodivergent. Neurodivergent is seeing things in a different way. The way that I explain it, seeing things in a different way than what is the norm. The norm is going this way. We kind of see things a different way, and now we're saying neurodivergent is not wrong. Yeah. It's not wrong. It's just different. So if I am selfish, that's per the word. It's just I am choosing to pull more things to me because that's what I care about. And if we allow everyone to do their own thing, then everyone can be wherever they want to be. I care about other people. I don't care about other people. Okay, we're all part of the statistical anomaly. This is all the process.
So let's talk about intuition a little bit, and if there are ways for people in relationships to spot this kind of behavior before 2 years have passed and it's and most likely this was happening from the very beginning too.
Most likely.
If someone is going to engage in that kind of behavior, chances are they do it all the time, and chances are there were more than woman A, woman B.
Most
there may have
likely.
been C, D, E,
The
F, G.
alphabet is very long. They didn't tell the alphabet, for sure.
Especially if it's that why not attitude. Why not? Why not? You know, we've got Tinder, we've got, multiple days of the week, flexible job. Why not?
For sure. And 50, 100 years ago, you would only have to go 1 mile down to the next town. You could have a separate family for the same process. They're off traveling, doing whatever work. They come home. There's not the internet. There's not mail going forward. You just live in a different town and do a whole separate family and do your thing. So it is not new.
No,
the process is not new for sure.
No, it's just easier.
Yeah.
Well, but maybe not though, because we are so connected.
Yes.
That you can have access to somebody's location and have access to somebody's phone. And I think that because so many people have heard these stories of situations like this, they can get a little like overprotective or like protecting themselves by requesting that kind of access to somebody's life. And so that's something that could be unhealthy as well. That like having, if your intuition is pinging and it's like something's going on here, but instead of confronting the person and trying to have a conversation, whether or not they will actually tell the truth is another thing. But then it turns into like, hey babe, can I see your phone for a minute?
Sure.
And then you're
Sure.
We didn't have this problem at all because we were in an open relationship, and so it was, not anything that where there was suspicion or anything. But yeah, so you can go too far. I can see how people can start to feel a little bit crazy too, because if you do confront the person, or if you have a suspicion and then you go the route of like, hey, how about we share our location with each other?
Right,
and then, then your partner is like, oh no, and gives some reason why. And then you're like, okay. And then you try to justify the reason, and then something else happens. And then, and then you get into like gaslighting territory if the partner is constantly lying. And I feel like it's situations like that if you are in a relationship where you are gaslit, I hear this from a lot of people, that you start to doubt yourself. And doubt is the thing that kills intuition, because intuition requires you to believe and to trust your inner knowing. And if somebody is gaslighting you, if somebody is telling you like, oh, you're crazy, like you don't need that, why do you need that, why don't you trust me? And gaslighting can be like a constant barrage of questioning you, so then you start questioning yourself. Then it takes people a long time to heal from that and then tap into their intuition again.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you have a small divergence, and the longer it goes, it's all of this space and time in between. Because probably somewhere in the beginning you're like, whoa, it's really interesting that this event happened to this event, and you're like, well, the intuition is whispering to you, hey, there's this thing. And if there's not a moment where there's a pause, where you pause and think about your intuition, how you're feeling and what that might mean, then it continues to verge over to the longer portion where there's these 2 points that are so far apart when they were really close at the beginning. And your intuition you have more work to do to believe and to work with your intuition that makes it a thing that you're looking for.
I think in intimate relationships too, there's so many different factors. And so I think like knowing woman A, at the beginning of the relationship, even if she had felt some intuition that there was some kind of cheating going on or lying, it would have been easy to kind of push it aside. Like, we're just starting to see each other, like not a big deal, this might be happening, but I'm okay with it for now. And so didn't confront it at the beginning. And then I think that as relationships develop, you have more motivation to stay with the person, stay secure.
Sure.
And so then you're like not listening to your intuition even more, because it's probably still pinging, but you're choosing security and comfort over the discomfort of confronting what your inner knowing is telling you. And then 10 years go by. Well, maybe talking about myself. Not with you, but in my marriage. that was not a situation with us. But like time goes by, and like, sometimes you have kids, and then there's even more motivation to stay and push that intuition, push that inner knowing aside. And because it requires stepping into a really uncomfortable spot at that point.
Yes. So after the points diverge, it's super uncomfortable to do with your intuition. However, intuition is not specifically about your relationship. Intuition is about your entire life process. And so it talks to you in all these different things. And that's just one of the things that it's talking to you about with this particular scenario. It's giving you still a little intuition, but it's also giving you this and this and this and this and this. And if you're not in the process of listening to your intuition, then you're kind of like, all these things are kind of, I'm going to mull down all these things, but then they continue to grow. Time continues to go on and things continue to move on. Because at the beginning of the process where you're like, male person A is with female person A, and there's a little bit of there. It's something not perfect, something that you don't want to truly lean into, but it's just a casual relationship, so no big deal. And that no big deal is the first yellow flag or intuition, and then you continue to do the thing, but time goes on and you're like, well, okay, well this, and it adds layers to the process and goes on, and then you're at this point where like, well, I've invested this time and I don't want to do this thing, but I didn't listen to my intuition at the base. And at that base was like, there's a little bit of if there. And you weren't quiet enough to listen to that intuition at that time to be able to lean a little bit in or lean a little bit out to make the choice that would be best, make the choice that would be easiest to move forward in the future, because life happens. You've got kids, you've got work, you've got storms and everything else going on. And so you're busy and intuition's like, hey, did you do this for dinner? Hey, did you do that thing for the garage? You know, these little things that our intuition is giving you. And because you've got something blaring, you don't follow that intuition about that particular thing, but that time still goes on. So as the 5 year of the relationship is here, other things happen during that time period, and you're like, oh well, it'll just be okay, yeah, and then you have this information later on. So intuition is always speaking to you a little bit, but about so many different things. And that is a time where that is the statement where everyone needs to take a breath of life, try to de-stress, meditation, whatever works for you, so that you're able to think things through and pause and understand, like, okay, here's what's going on, here's my information coming in. What is it I'm able to do with this? How is I able to respond to that?
And it sounds like what you're saying too, it's not an all or nothing thing. So thinking about woman A, you know, she was and still is an intuitive person, but didn't listen to her intuition in this particular situation and was blindsided by the behavior of the man. And so what advice would you have for woman A who's now like, well, what did I do wrong? I'm an intuitive person. I listen to my intuition. I practice this, but I totally missed it in this situation. I mean, that's not where she is. She's kind of like, she quickly was able to be like, oh, I did see the signs, and go back and be like, well, these are the reasons why I may have ignored the signs. And to be honest, she wasn't completely blindsided by the behavior of woman or of the man. But I think woman B, I don't know her at all, and she's younger, and, you know, just to make some generalizations and some assumptions about her, she did appear to be blindsided. And so what advice would you have for somebody who's in that situation where they're like, how did I not know? How did I not know? And then I can see how then you might be like, how do I trust myself at all if I miss something this huge?
My advice would be that everyone is human and everyone is floating through this existence at different points and having different experiences. We all are growing and working through our own particular scenario as we encounter other people. So the advice would be to move a little bit slower through life. As something comes in, as you feel the information from external, take a moment and say, where is this coming from? What am I feeling? Honor the feeling and take the data and have the feeling over here. This occurred. Here's what I feel about it. What am I supposed to do? Where's the information coming from? How can I move from this process? What is it telling me? Mm-hmm. Is it telling me I need to fight or flight? Is it telling me I need to look a little bit closer? Is it telling me that there's something where something is just not right? And if it's just not right, take a moment, time period, breathe, get more information, amount that's available. There is the moving too quickly and there's the moving too slowly. So get a relative amount of information for the time period and the situation, and then make the best action that you can, and with love, and move forward. Take the experience, whatever the outcome is that experience, take that in with love, then take it into data and take it into feeling. Here's the data of the thing that I did after this process. Here's the feeling of the thing that I did after this process. I love myself and I'm moving forward. What do I want to do next? How do I want to move forward with the next process? Is it something where what did I learn from that scenario? Am I moving forward with love for myself, or am I going to stay closed in? Mm-hmm. So again, the advice would be to learn from each step that we take. Don't let it be a positive or negative on the board. Let it be something that occurred and that we learned how I reacted from the scenario of the information I was giving, and how I felt from the scenario of the information I was giving, and what I would like to do moving forward. How that felt. Again, leaning in and leaning out. Like, that was not so cool. Okay. Well, what thing did I get from that, and how did I feel? Okay, so maybe I need to lean slightly more towards getting more information about decoding the information that's given. Everyone's getting all sorts of stuff. Intuition is saying this. The television and the words and all this stuff is coming in. Taking a little time to breathe through and to be a little bit more comfortable with the information that you're given prior to making a choice in a movement going forward. Mm-hmm.
I think too, intuition is something that we feel in our bodies, and like our bodies will guide us in the right direction. And so I think being in tune with your body is really, really important, and so that you can feel the difference between something that's anxiety or, past traumas and how that's making you feel versus that really inner nudge that feels more true. And it takes practice. And it takes listening to it and acting on it as well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's shift away a little bit and talk about these kinds of feelings and intuition in non-traditional relationships. So as I said at the top, we were in an open relationship for a decade. And I think I failed to say at the beginning that Emmanuel during this period of time was a guide and mentor to me, and a lot of where I am right now is due in a large part to his patience and guidance, and I am just so grateful to him for everything that he's given to me in this life. But all right, instead of being sappy, we'll move on to more fun stuff. So I would say that open relationships, and I think I've heard other people say this, it's intentionally putting yourself into high stress situations, because when you're in a monogamous relationship, you have two people to consider, and then you put yourself and you have multiple relationships. Then you're managing just a lot more people, a lot more how they're feeling, and managing time, and it's just like, as you were saying about the input, it's a whole lot of input. It's a whole lot of input from a lot of different people who might have very different motivations. And I guess I'll start. Well, I'd love to dig into situations where I felt like everything's fine, everything's good, and Emmanuel would gently come to me and be like, hey, you might want to look at this person a little bit more closely and, look a little bit closer at how this person is behaving in certain situations. And I was in a point in my life where I was having fun. I was having a lot of fun.
For sure.
And I think my reaction to Emmanuel was like, I'm good, I'm fine. And I was. And like ultimately, like during that period of time, even putting yourself into high stress situations, like I remained safe the entire time. I think that there were times when things could have gone badly, and I am divinely protected. Thank you, spirit guides, and for all of that. But you're right, like I learned so much from being in those situations. And when you're intimate with people, like that is how you can see into people's souls. And then you can learn so much about their behavior. And it was so great to have you to come back and be like, hey, this happened and it felt a little bit off. What do you think about that? And get your perception on how things acted. And I'm not going to lie, it was not 100% like, hey, Emmanuel, I had this experience, and look, can we talk about it? We would sit down, have a glass of wine, and we would chuckle. And it was not that all the time. There was definitely conflict, but nothing that, I look back and there's no regret, and there's no, like, I hope there's no regret on your side.
No, I'm good. No regret.
But yeah, I mean, there were definitely high tension times because of differing perspectives of the behavior of other people and my behavior. And sometimes I felt I was going through a dark night of the soul, probably multi-year dark night of the soul. And so that added to the conflict and tension sometimes between us because I hadn't sorted my shit out. And Emmanuel was very patient as I sorted my shit out, but I would sometimes project my shit onto him, and that was probably the thing that caused the most tension. But let's stick for today let's talk about other people and the ways that we would communicate about and how we saw people differently. I mean, I will say, I probably will add a disclaimer at the beginning of this episode, like Sarah would get dick drunk. And so I would get cloudy about certain people. You have new relationship energy, you're having fun.
NRE.
Yeah, NRE. And my judgment was definitely clouded. And then there are definitely, in retrospect, some engagements that I had where I was like, oh, why did I do that? And at the time, Emmanuel would sit back and be like, why is she doing that? But he wouldn't say that. So anyway, talk a little bit about those experiences. I'm curious.
I will. But before I do that, you mentioned an open relationship or that similar status is putting an individual into a high stress scenario. I wouldn't use those words. I would say it's more of flexing a muscle in different ways that you may not understand that you're going to flex the muscle. What comes with adding energy from another partner or scenario into that process. It's just that's a whole separate orbit, So you've got what the partner A is with partner B, and they're doing their thing, and they've learned how to do, and they do their flex, and then you've got a third or fourth or whatever partner, and then there's another thing, but everyone has their gravity. And so that gravity pulls and then flexes the water in different places because that's what occurs. You just can't give energy to another place without having it flex something else.
Yeah, that's true.
Is it high stress? If you're low on gravity, if you're low on energy, it becomes high stress. But if each individual has, let's say, 100% of their gravity or their water or whatever, then it's like, okay, so here's what we're going to do. La, da, da, da. Okay, you do you do you, da, 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 da. And each person kind of manages their own gravity, even though they're in this polycule or this scenario going on.
It's possible. I don't know if I've seen it yet. Where everybody owns and has control over their own gravity. I don't know.
And so
I'd love to hear from you all if you have examples of that.
For sure, but so that's also part of the earth that we live in. Every person is born at a different time and has different experiences and grows through a different, I don't want to use the word maturity, but grows through different levels in their spiritual journey as they're doing whatever they're supposed to do on the earth. So whatever age, let's say two people are 25, they meet each other. That doesn't mean that each person's at 25 years of experience and understanding of them, who they are. It just means that they've rotated 25 years around the earth, and they may be at different places of how they look at the world. My experience is the one person's experience could be, I'm looking to get married at blah, 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 after doing this. Another person's experience could be, I am looking to travel the world, and we're 25 and we want to meet up together and do this process together. Well, then they have to figure out how that's going to work, because those are separate things. Not necessarily getting married and traveling the world, but sometimes whatever the intrinsic understanding of the world is may be different. And so if you have a couple A person and couple and A, let's say male person A and let's say female person B A together, and then they add other people, each individual has an intrinsic flow or frequency that may be different than the other scenario, and that is what might cause the stress, because you're like, whoa, I thought the world was like this. Well, their world is like this, and the other person's world like this, and the other person's world like this. And so you've got this mixture of this tidal wave whirlwind of all these different pieces coming together, and every person is in a different location experiencing the whirlwind at a different level and different viewpoint. Yeah. One person may have beach weather and it's calm. Another person may be getting hit by a tractor, and we're all working it together and like, what's going on? How is this happening? So it requires my best advice to anyone is to take time to make sure whatever your first relationship is stable. And like you guys talked about a number of different things. You guys had experiences together, and you guys are comfortable with each other together and with each other apart. And then knowing that, we enjoy each other's company together. We'll come back together at the appropriate time for each person. And then you can work on building other relationships outside of that after whatever your primary relation or first relationship is, and how that goes through the process. Back to each person being single, unique, and whole. We come together, we're better, or we're more. You happen to go over there, I'm still whole. I'm still happy, I'm still whole. I still have everything that fulfills me. So it's about fulfilling yourself first. Before getting into a relationship where that other person is your other 50 half or 25 half or the other. Because if that other person, other entity changes or does something else, you will feel a deficit because you were not whole prior to that individual coming together.
And that's the case in a monogamous relationship or,
For sure.
or non-monogamous relationships,
And that's why the stressful comment comes in, because whatever percentage of monogamous relationships are, you get together and you're done. That's where I'm expected to be till I die. And however it flows, there's really no question about that. You just don't go out of it. There's no option to a monogamous relationship. You just do your thing and continue on. We hear these days there's people who've been married 50 years and they get divorced, 40 years get divorced. And you're like, what's up with that? Like, well, they didn't really like each other, And so that's a thing that occurs, but that's not the intent for a monogamous relationship. Monogamous relationship, the intent is you two are together till you die. And so when we talk about poly relationships or multiple relationships or open relationships, whatever the term is, we call it a stressful relationship because it often shows scenarios, or it often brings up examples of stress in the primary relationship because the primary relationship was not 100% plus 100% coming together in a meld. It's 95, 75, whatever. And this is the thing. This is a person that makes me full. This is my thing. But if that person is now taking time somewhere else, I'm feeling less full because they were my fullness. And so we say it is stressful, but it really highlights the beginning scenario of each individual person where they are not feeling 100%. So there's like, oh, you know what? I don't need another person. I'm gonna do my thing and and I'm gonna do these. Let's say if you're, let's say an atypical male who's in toxic masculinity. I'm gonna have sex with all these women and I don't want someone to be my person. I don't need anyone. Maybe that's true. Often it's, they're compensating for something and they're doing these other relationships and all of these other scenarios because they're compensating for something. Let's talk about the atypical female who's like, you know what? At 25, I want to be married. I want to have my first kid and help picket fence. That is also part of the things that we've been ingrained with. The female is to be the homemaker and to do these things and have kids versus you figure out what your life is and do your thing. So if you're 25 and female and you're looking for a mate to do the thing, you are not saying, I'm okay where I am and I love everything about me. I'm 100% where I am. I don't need anyone else. If someone else comes along, sure. If someone else doesn't come along, sure. That's a different status than I need this relationship and we need to be at this process. We need to feel this to get married for this. And then we have the stereotypical male who's 35, 45 and like, okay, I'm done sleeping around. Now I'm looking to get married and do this process. So there's also a missing point there where they are that person is is hanging out and doing these processes in order to fulfill something where they are to make them 100%. And then they're saying, okay, now I'm slowing down. I'm fine. Now let's do the homemaker thing. Now I'm ready to settle down. So there's a difference in the processing where if you are not truly single, unique, and whole, your actions will show that process, and you will look for someone to fill that who may not be exactly what you're looking for. But it says, you know what? You'll do. This is the time. You'll do. This is the time. And then you're in a monogamous relationship, and you're like, oh, it's okay. Yeah, this is what we do. This is the average. This is the average level.
And you're talking about like emotional fulfillment too, because a lot of people go into non-monogamous relationships, open relationships, because practically like, I really like going to the movies and Emmanuel doesn't like going to the movies, and I would really like to have a partner who loves what I love, and like that's okay that Emmanuel doesn't like to go to the movies. I'll go to the movies with Joe, and then because Joe loves going to the movies too, and so it's a better experience for both of us than for me to be like dragging Emmanuel along, and he's like, you know, you can play along, but it's not the same energy that as when you're doing something with somebody who also really, really loves that. And so that's one of the reasons why people go into open relationships and give it a try.
For sure.
But you're talking more about the emotional fulfillment, like filling emotional holes. And that's where I think it can get a little bit dicey. And so going into maybe spilling the tea a little bit about some of the mistakes that I've made in these situations. Can you think of a time when, I can think of lots of them actually, where you were like, hey babe, maybe you should think about that a little bit more, and what my response was, and maybe in your perception times when I was shutting down my intuition because for whatever reason.
Yes. However, I think it might be more fruitful if you give me a time where you felt like I was pulling you back, and then I will give you my experience per my side of that scenario.
Yeah, that's good. I was going through kind of like a teenage period in a way, I think, in our relationship together, because I had a really messy divorce, and I was finding myself, this will be in another episode, this maybe will come up a lot, like when I was coming out of my divorce, I just think about this all the time. Emmanuel had sought help for himself from this woman who's a healer, and he suggested I talk to her. And I get on the phone with her, and we're having a session, and she asks me, she says, well, Sarah, what do you like to do? How do you like to spend your time? And I froze, and I had an emotional response because I could not answer her question. I had built my entire life around other people, and then went through a divorce, and then all of a sudden had free time that I had never had free time ever in my entire life. And so I was like learning what I liked, learning who I was actually. And so I think that there was a little bit of that like teenage rebellious energy, like I'm just doing my thing, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm gonna go do, I'm gonna like, just, and I wasn't, that was my energy. I was like, so just kind of like, there was also an element of not being ready to dig deep and heal. And so there was a whole lot of distraction going on. And Emmanuel said to me for a very long time, many years, like very gently, hey, maybe you should just stay home and sit and be with your thoughts. And I would be like, I can't do that. I can't do that. What do you mean? I can't. And then like sometimes I would be in a mess emotionally, and he would go out, and then I would be even more of a mess. I'm like, wait a minute, you're like abandoning me. And like, I don't know what to do with myself. And anyway, so that we can talk more about that later on. But getting back to relationships, which is a little bit more fun. So that's just a little bit of the backstory of like of our interactions. And so definitely in my relationships with other people, it was a lot of kind of teenage, like, well, this is just fun. Like I wasn't looking to fill holes, I don't think, like emotional holes, except for like filling time and avoidance of dealing with trauma that I had experienced.
If I may cut in, but hold your thought on that, on the way where you were going with what you're going to explain. Cutting in, the pendulum swings one way and the other. So as I have heard your life and seen experiences, you were the energy of your life was very much focused on, there are things we need to do, there are people we need to take care of, there are objectives to be done, there are lives that are at stake. And the lives, I mean like taking care of children and taking care of family members and taking care of duties. There are things that need to happen in order for the next day to occur. And so that was very much more where your pendulum was swinging, actually stayed in that location. And when the relationship opened up, there were scenarios and energies and events and opportunities to swing to the, just gonna go with the rafters and go to, as you say, just having fun, and doing all these things, And so my position was like, hey, that sounds like a lot of fun. How much fun are you having? What's the status? Do you have any confounds around this? When should I expect you back? What is the going on? Just so I have understanding of the boundaries. And the response was, again, just having fun, doing my thing. Let me do my thing, and that's how the pendulum was swinging back and forth as I would watch all of the intent, the passion and the level of, I want to say, there's a different word I'm looking for, but the level of intent, the level of focus on making sure that things were done that are things we live in this world. You got to do this check mark, that do this check mark, that check mark, and then over here we're like, wheels. We don't need to check anything. No need to check anything. We're just going to go out and full tilt, and it will be what it will be, and everything will be okay. And so my part was the back and forth. Like, where are we at? Like, what's going on? So go ahead.
Well, and I think you kind of hit on it, is that the places when I felt like you were intruding was when you were asking me to stop and think a little bit and like maybe be a little bit more intentional in what I was doing, because I don't think I wanted to. Because if I did stop and think about certain situations that I was in and like certain people that I engaged with, I would be forced into that introspective space that I was avoiding. Mm-hmm. And so I think that I would react poorly when you would ask questions about my intention. Or I think that there are situations too when you would ask specific questions about, well, what did this person say to you? How did they act in this situation? It felt intrusive. And I definitely push back, and I would like freeze up and kind of hole up because probably because I knew intuitively that those were not the things that I was supposed to be doing. Those are not the best people for me to be engaging with. And I didn't want to acknowledge that. And just by virtue of you being like, hey, so what was that conversation that you had? And or I say a lot, I use a lot of words and would volunteer a lot of information. And there were many, many times where I would volunteer something and Emmanuel would be like, wait, what? What happened? He said what? He did what? And then I would freeze up. I'd be like, oh no, now we're gonna have to talk about this. I don't want to talk about this. I'd be like, you're just like getting in the way of my flow, Emmanuel.
You're ruining my high by picking on this one particular thing which you think is a concern.
I'm like, it's not a big deal. I would just be like, it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. I got this. But so how did that feel to you? Because you're an incredibly intuitive person. And I am sure I can think of many, many situations from your perspective now in retrospect where you would see Sarah walking over to somebody at a party and engaging and talking, and you would see how the person treated me and spoke to me, and your spidey sense would be going off. How did you manage that?
I would say I managed it in a category. What's the word? So I categorized the situation. Like I was like, okay, so what do we have going on here? Is this a short-term event where we're at this one place, where the scenarios are interacting? Then Sarah and the people are interacting here. What can I do to oversee, or what level of action can I take to Sarah's going to do this thing? Okay, cool. You do this thing. Where should I be? What is it what level of comfort did I do to kind of make the scenario safer? And whatever that was, I was like, well, that's a level. We have a relationship where I love her and I want the best for her and want her to be in every scenario that she wants to be in. And if this is what she chooses, then this is what she chooses. Okay, here are the things I can help with, and here's the things I can't. At that point that I can't, I'm going to continue to back off, and then let let the scenario play out as it was.
I can imagine too, again, all in retrospect, not things that I thought about at the time, like putting myself in your shoes too. I was going through, for much of this time, a dark night of the soul, and you also were in the position that I came home to you, and if something went wrong, like, you would help pick up the pieces. And that had to have played into how you felt about me being wild and free and not listening to my intuition, not picking up on signs. I mean, there weren't very many situations that went really poorly, but like just times when I am overextending myself, like going out too much, and maybe like giving too much of myself to somebody else who didn't deserve it, honestly. Like that's probably not to speak for you, but I can imagine that, because you are so in tune to energy, and I would, and looking back, there are many, many situations where I would give way too much of myself to people who did not deserve it. And that must have been really, really hard, because we have a finite amount of energy too, and that would be less energy for you from me. Positive, if I'm giving all this positive energy and I'm like coming from a compromised place, and then I'm depleted, there's less than that I can give to you.
So what we haven't touched on is, from that point of you depleting your energy and me, the way I saw our relationship, the way I saw the relationship is that we melded into one unit. And when you would go out and basically what you said, there would be less energy for me, but it wasn't so much less energy for me, it was less energy for our unit. So we had, there were definitely times where you would come back and we would need to recharge, and we would have trouble with that because the week started, the kids started, the regular day-to-day stuff was going on. And so it would be stuff, and you would not have your normal energy because of this process, and we would run into these clunks, let's say it, like we normally do this and we normally do that, or this is the process and this is the process. And so it was a thing where I then made a choice, or my reaction, my learned reaction from my life was to siphon off and put a spiritual or energy wall between how much I would give to you after I saw you do this process where you would give off. And that was the thing that we had issues with many times. Many times. I was like, okay, I'm concerned.
I need you. Where are you? Why are you not answering me?
Yeah, for sure. So it would be like Sarah and I together, we're doing this flow, we're having a flow, we're doing this flow, and then there would be a thing, a scenario, a person, a place, a scenario going on, and I'm like, that's not really good for you. She's like, I'm gonna go do my thing. I'm like, all right, go do your thing. Sarah does her thing. In certain scenarios, the thing does not generate an excessive amount of flow or energy for Sarah as she comes back. And then as Sarah comes into us, the thing to rejoin, Sarah's looking to do that flow, because we would always have this flow of energy, because that's the way we did our thing. When we're one, there's not a you or you and I, it's just us. And Sarah would come back and be like, all right, let's do this us, because I'm kind of like in this place, this thing, and I would be like, I'm here, but energetically I would be like, there would be a wall, there would be a place of how much energy I would consciously allow to come through to do this process to this other thing, to negate this other thing, or to fill up this process. I'm like, I'm physically here, and here's the thing, but this energy that you're throwing around, I feel that it is my choice to remain my personal energy at this point level and not share with you because this is the place that you've chosen to do and the thing that you've chosen to be. And it made so many issues at the beginning and through our process because it was not it wasn't spoken that this was happening. It wasn't spoken that you have this energy that is part of us together. You're going to take your energy and you're going to do this thing, and it's going to be different. Let's just call it different than the energy that we had together. But we're going to come back and we would want the same energy that we had together. But because there was this third, fourth party energy, there was no way for it to be the same because those are different people having different life experiences. And it wasn't what we had built as our nesting process. Our nesting process was whatever color, and these other colors made it different. But there was a desire to be back at that place. And I was like, I don't want to go to the frequency that you're at. For those people to be together with you. And so it caused a lot of conflict for us, for our relationship, for sure.
Well, because from my side, when you would withdraw your energy from me, you would be present, yes, but you are physically present, but you have such a strong energy. When you withdraw it, it felt painful and it felt like you were punishing me.
Malicious.
Yeah. I mean, not malicious, but it felt like it kind of like I had done something wrong, and then I would imagine, like, what is he mad about? Like, what did I do wrong? And then I would kind of spiral into all of the different things that I could have done wrong, and that was all trauma response from previous relationships and stuff. But and I think that there could have been more communication between you and me about that, and would have made it smoother about what the intent was behind removing your energy. So just to shift gears a little bit, because that's a little bit, you probably saw from my body language, there's a little it's still a little like raw, because I can bring myself back to those times, and it was really, really painful. It was really painful. I did want to touch on one more thing, is I think that you are a big believer in self-worth and knowing your worth and expecting a certain level of behavior towards you, because I respect myself and honor myself so much.
I would change. Sorry.
Yeah.
Hold on to your other thought.
Yeah.
I would say not expecting the behavior, but if the behavior doesn't match what I think I need, then I will extract myself from the process because that it's on me. That's on me. And so I regulate where the level, the interaction goes. And that's my leaning in and leaning out. I'm like, this doesn't really feel good. And there are other scenarios, so many different options. And so I will just lean out and do the thing. Maybe I'll miss out on a event, a movie, a scenario, a dinner or whatever, but I am not feeling the positivity of this time period with this scenario and how it's playing out, whatever that may be. And then that's like, oh, do I want to miss out? Do I want to go home and whatever? Or do I want to, miss out is the best word. Do I want to miss out in FOMO? Do I want to have FOMO in this process? No. Well, then I sit here and do this thing. Versus, I'm going to have FOMO, but it's FOMO for me is better than experiencing the rest of what's going on at this point in time with this particular scenario.
Yeah, no, and this you're right, and that's something that I really have learned from you by watching you and just really embody that respect for yourself. And during this period of time when we were in an open relationship together, I did not. I did not really understand my own worth, and I did not engage in relationships where other people knew my worth. And again, it was no situations that were dangerous or really terrible, but still, like, not anything I would engage in now, because now I'm at a point in my life where I am more like you in that I understand my limited energy. I'm totally good all by myself, nobody else. Like I can sit alone in a room, I can meditate, and like I love being by myself. And if I'm going to give my energy to somebody else, I am going to be really sure that that is something that matches what my worth is, that I'm not going to put my energy into somebody who doesn't respect me, who is in a place that isn't on the vibration that I'm on, where there's not some kind of reciprocity. And there were lots and lots of situations where I wasn't taken advantage of, but but I don't know.
I wouldn't go that far, and I wanted to jump back to like 30 seconds. You said people who know my worth. So I would challenge you to say it is not about people who know your worth.
Right.
It's about whatever you feel at that time is the thing that you want to do. And so those external people are doing their thing. They're living their life. They're solos.
Oh,
You're
boy.
wondering if this guy was going to come around.
There's a giant would-be. Oh my God! It is the biggest would-be I've ever seen.
Go over there. All right, we'll deal with that later. But what I was saying is, it is. I think it's more about not external person nor my worth. It's where am I today? What is my present? I'm present in this moment. Is this moment the thing that I want to do? Maybe it's positive on the list, maybe it's negative on the list, but I'm okay doing this thing. Do I want to drink alcohol and hang out and blah, 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 blah? That's what I choose to do, okay, right at this point. Sure, okay. But if that's not what I choose to do, that's not fulfilling me, going to the thing that's fulfilling you, leaning in and leaning out. At the point in time that we're talking about the things that you had going on, I feel like you were not present in your body and following the things that your body wanted you to do. And that was the scenario. So that's why I was like, oh, are you sure that your body wants you to do that? Because through the last few days, you've been X, Y, Z. And so to do this thing after you've done X, Y, Z doesn't really add up to, it doesn't make sense. Because you're starting, let's say if you're building a house and you're doing foundation, blah 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 blah. On this particular day, you would go back and spray water in some place, and you've got 2x4s. I'm like, well, if you want your 2x4s to be structure, you maybe not want to put water on them. But as the process that you were doing, you would focus here, switch to focus here, focus here to things I have to do. Oh, you know what? I need to do some things I just want to do. And there was a instead of a analog where there's some type of flow, it was digital. You went one from the other.
Well, I would say too, I was a people pleaser, and I was putting other people before I was putting before myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And like at its core, I think that's what I meant by people not knowing my self-worth. Like I was giving them too much power. I was like giving too much of myself.
Sure.
Because I was a pleaser and I was not.
Your self-worth was self. You did not have the self-worth.
Right, exactly.
So that you'd be like, you know what?
Yeah. I was getting it externally. Yeah. Right.
Agreed.
Rather than internally.
Agreed. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Well, and that's why I had such a strong reaction to you pulling your energy back too, because again, I was seeking energy. I was getting fulfilled from external sources rather than internal. Yeah. And I think, going back to intuition, before we wrap this up, I think that, there were times when when I did have intuition. It's not like I was in a place that was devoid of intuition.
Sure.
However, now looking back, I would traverse all of those situations in such a different way because the way that I've leveled up and really like sat and done the work and been by myself and learned the cues in my body and learned about my inner knowing. And so now if I would walk into a room, in some of those situations that I was in, I would not engage with a lot of the people that I did engage with at the time. So
I think, no, I know that myself and a large number of people feel like intuition is something special, some strike, something glaring. It's not.
Yeah.
It's with you all the time. It's gentle. It's like, maybe you should wipe your feet before you go to the blah, 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 because you're going to either get it dirty or maybe it's slippery. Maybe I should park here where it's a little bit lighter so the heel, because I know that I have an ankle. These are things that are trying to help you go through each moment a little bit better. A little bit easier through the process. And we call it intuition, but it's just like, hey, what makes sense for me today at this time? Parking over there, getting this water, getting this, doing this tonight before that process, and it's more of a flow that is always there, and that we could use as just have a more relaxed life experience, because we're all going through this life. We all have stuff, and we're all at different places. And we cannot compare to someone else, but we also have stuff that says like, oh, well, it's best for me at this time. And it might be different than tomorrow or on the next day. And just flowing with that process, having the time to listen to ourselves, which we don't. We've got work, family, media. We have all these things that we're going on. And so we don't have the time thinking to listen to the intuition, the leaning in, the leaning out. And when we take time to do that, you're like, yeah, I really don't want to do that thing. That is intuition saying you don't want to do that thing. However, you're like, well, if I don't do that thing, then this person, these other things will occur. And that's the part you have to do. That's the life portion. I really don't want to go to my office meeting because it is blah, 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 and these people will be there. Well, that's your intuition. It says you don't want to go. But I told someone else I was going to be there. Okay, well, that's not intuition. That is the part that you're putting on top of the process, and how you deal with that is life. That is the portion of life that continues to go through from level to level to level. It's the thing that we put after intuition that makes intuition such a taboo process, such a thing that we can't touch. Because we're like, well, yeah, I always knew I shouldn't have parked over there because I have to walk back after this, or I knew so-and-so was going to be there and they said this and now I'm kind of blah, blah, blah. So it's that portion of whether or not you can, what you need, the steps after the intuition gives you the nudge, what is supposed to happen and what you do from that.
Yeah. Thank you all. I hope this was an interesting conversation, and thank you to Emmanuel for being my best friend and helping me through so much, and still hanging with me in this life. That is it for today, and I'll see you next time on Goddess in Training. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Goddess in Training. I hope something in this episode stirred your knowing or softened your heart. If it spoke to you, share it with someone who needs it, or leave a review or comment to help others find us. If you're watching on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you want to hear more conversations like this, please consider supporting Goddess in Training on Patreon. For more tools and offerings to deepen your intuition practice, visit goddessintraining.online. You can also join the Scroll of Seshat on Substack for twice-weekly stories of how I followed my intuition. The music for Goddess in Training is Madre Ayahuasca by Arkawa, and you can find more of his music in the link to his website in the show notes. Remember, your intuition is not a mystery, it's a memory. Keep listening.
resplandor del fuego, estrellita, tabaco santo, fuerza derramé, soplo de luz, soplo encantado, viajecito, bendición del cielo, fortaleza, tigrecito de